gaming oddities received this early review copy from the game's publisher. As usual, this will be an unbiased, fair review of the title. Let's get to it. Cynthia, hidden in the Moonshadow, only came to my attention in the last couple of weeks. I was browsing for upcoming indie Switch games, and I happened to come across a trailer for something that looked absolutely beautiful, and it really took me by surprise. I knew at that point I needed to get a copy of this game and give it a try myself. So I'm going to run over all our usual categories, looking at graphics, audio, story, most importantly gameplay, and give it its overall score out of 5. Start off first with the graphics and art style for this one, and mix in a little bit of performance here as well. This was the first thing that drew me to the game in that trailer. The art style looks fantastic. It looks like Breath of the Wild got into a blender with a little bit of Horizon and some Genshin Impact, and all came out together as a nice little indie package. But I did mention that I wanted to touch a little bit on performance because it somewhat spoils that nice art style and the graphical capabilities here. The game runs slightly choppy. It's not unplayable, it's not something that broke my experience, but it's definitely a little bit choppy. There is quite a bit of pop-in the distance. Less notable so much on an OLED Switch in handheld, but playing the game docked it became quite noticeable. However, this game is from a very small development team, and what they've pulled off here to get us a 3D experience has to be applauded. Usually indie titles will go for a lesser 2D style, whereas this has put the effort in to try and get us a full 3D experience. It falls slightly short of what we would be used to in the AAA space, but it's definitely a credible effort for this indie developer. The character model of the main character is generally good. I would say a little bit of work would need to go into the environments, but they are given that cel-shaded look, which keeps them quite minimal, so it doesn't really affect things too much. There's a few nice little particle effects. There are a couple of scenes that happen at nighttime, and you'll see particles floating around the sky. It looked really nice on the OLED. Moving on next to the audio. The main soundtrack for the game is this kind of ethereal, woodwind, string, piano soundtrack. It's really good, it's nice, it fits with the vibe and the feel of the game, and they've done really good work here. In terms of the character work, voice work, I do think this is really good. The voiceover for the main character, for such a small development team to have that, is a credible effort, and it was a really good performance from the voice actress for the main character. I really liked her performance. However, one character near the end is not so good. I don't want to spoil what it is, but it kind of took me out of the experience a bit. But I would say overall, the voice work is quite good. Again, for such a small team, the effort that's been put into this, it has to be applauded. In terms of the story, well, I'll be honest with you, it's quite throwaway. I did try my best to follow exactly what was going on, but it's kind of quite jumbled up. I found it hard personally to follow it myself, but with me, I would kind of err more on the side of gameplay rather than the storyline in most experiences, so I'm a little bit more forgiving for something like that. The story is told through the previously mentioned voiceover, and sometimes it's a little bit on the nose. It kind of tells you a lot with the voiceover rather than actually showing you things. This may be due to budgetary issues, so they decided to kind of fill out the story and tell you what was going on with the voiceover, but sometimes I just feel it was a little bit on the nose. There are various little collectibles throughout the game, some of them for actual gameplay, but some of them are also for story. There are little diary entries as well, and they help to kind of flesh things out. Overall, the story is probably, for me, the weakest point of this title. So, the gameplay. This is the bit that really had me thinking of Breath of the Wild. As you can see from the clips on screen, a lot of it is based around combat with a bow and arrow. For some reason, I think it's a baffling choice. If you pull the left trigger, you have to pull it once to pull the bow back, and then to release the bow, you have to press that left trigger again. I do prefer it that when you hold the left trigger down, it pulls the bow back, and when you release it, it releases it. It can be changed in the settings, but for some reason that's the default, and I found that a little bit strange. And another slight disappointment with the bow action is that on Nintendo Switch, there's no motion aiming as of yet. This could be something that they can maybe port in with an update, but it's disappointing not to have this at the very start. We are accustomed to it with the like of Breath of the Wild or Splatoon for anything where you're aiming and shooting on Switch. It's such a unique feature of the console that a lot of developers have baked that into their titles, and I would like to have seen it here. As well as using the arrows for combat, you'll be using them to solve various puzzles. They're fairly simple, puzzles involving shooting arrows to hit switches, platforming sections, etc. One thing I didn't expect from the game is there is actually quite a fair emphasis on stealth mechanic, so you'll be sneaking around in kind of taller grass, trying to blend in and be unseen. The AI for these parts of the game isn't necessarily great, it is quite basic, but it did remind me of sneaking around the grass in Horizon on the PlayStation, but as I said, the AI isn't super great. You have the obligatory Breath of the Wild stamina wheel, and there's also a little bit of crafting put in there to build the like of arrows and stuff to help you along with your adventure, and that's basically the nuts and bolts of the game. It reminds me of somewhat of an older kind of 3D action game, akin to maybe something on the PS2 era, where it's giving you the kind of sense that you're in an open world or an open map, but you're actually just traveling from section to section and completing tasks along the way. In terms of the game's length, this one is a fairly short experience. Now, the price tag on this is relatively high. I would expect a little bit more gameplay for the money that you'd be spending on this. So if you're really interested, it's definitely one to jump on, but if it's something that doesn't quite grab you, it's maybe best waiting for that to come down a little bit. But as I said, I really enjoyed playing it on the OLED screen, so the Switch is a good option, but just keep in mind you are getting a shorter experience. Sometimes that's a good thing, and in this case I do think the game could have been bulked out a little bit more. The game seems to be suffering from the fact that it has big ideas, big concept, which is great, and you have to commend the development team. But it kind of feels like they didn't have the money or staff to be able to pull it off maybe just as well as the vision would have been in their mind. If you're interested in indie games or smaller development cycles, this is a good one to check out because it shows you just how much you can put into a title, but it's definitely not up there in terms of AAA quality. And for the price, it is quite a short experience. There is some optional DLC in terms of costumes available for the game, and a really nice touch is that it comes with built-in trophy support, so even though we don't have trophies on the Switch, you do get that nice little extra incentive to do certain things in the game, which may extend your playtime a little bit. So, rating the game overall. As I've said, it would be harsh to be too hard on this game. Some of its ideas are fantastic, and it is really trying to reach for the stars in terms of what it can do, and it pulls some of it off really well. I love the art style and the graphics of the whole overall package, they work really well. But it's hindered somewhat by performance issues, a little bit of stuttering, some pop-in, and overall the story just isn't quite there. This one is an interesting game with a nice art style, and its influences are coming from some of the best games over the last few years, but it doesn't quite reach the heights that I wanted it to. Gaming Oddities gives Cynthia a review score of 3 out of 5. If you enjoyed the review, let us know in the comments below, and subscribe for more Nintendo content on Gaming Oddities.